In a dramatic return to the White House, Donald Trump has wasted no time making his mark. From sweeping policy changes to controversial pardons, his presidency is already shaping up to be one of the most consequential and divisive in modern history.
His tone, I think, is going to be triumphal. His tone is going to be, one might even say, imperial. President Trump has been saying consistently that he won a landslide election and a mandate from the American people. And the truth matter is, historically speaking, it actually was a very, very close election. And more people in the country did not vote for the president than voted for him, more registered voters.
I would not say it's a success. I would not say it's a failure. It's simply too early, one way or the other. I would say the country is deeply divided, and it has been for some time. Certainly it was throughout Trump's first term. So you can be sure that half of the public will probably love whatever he says, and half of the public will absolutely hate whatever he says. And I don't think a speech can ever change that. Feelings run too strongly about Donald Trump.
The first item that President Trump is signing is the rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda.
Well, it certainly has been consequential. He talked during his first term about draining the swamp. He was unsuccessful in doing that in his first term, and he is certainly doubling down and appears to be determined to do that now. I expected he will be respectful but pointed. He was actually, I thought, fairly measured in all of the other State of the Union addresses that he gave during his first term. But I think he's going to focus on the themes that he has been displaying at an incredibly rapid rate.
Within days of taking office, Trump has issued a flurry of executive orders targeting key areas of government. He's pushed for major cuts to federal agencies, overhauled immigration policies, and taken a hardline stance on international trade.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
Yeah, I actually think there's almost no comparison whatsoever with the pace of change, and more importantly, I think the tone of change. We expect different administrations to come in and make changes. That's why they have a transition. That's why they have a transfer of power. But what's really been different about this administration is the lack of thought. And I mean that specifically, the lack of thought that's going into a lot of these decisions, because typically for the federal government, it takes weeks, months, years to make a decision about what to do with this $1 billion or that $1 billion. President Trump and the DOGE team in particular seem to be willing to do those things on the spur of the moment. Agencies that have taken decades to build up, and programs that have taken decades to build up, and data that's taken decades to build up is being eliminated, it would appear, haphazardly.
I don't think people should be surprised by the kinds of things that are happening. I think they're very surprised at the chaos and incompetence with which these things are being done. Now, how much matters more than the other, I can't say at this moment, but it's pretty clear that the chaotic way that this is proceeding is not what people expected from Trump, and particularly from Elon Musk.
Elon Musk has got to go. Hey, hey, go home. Elon Musk has got to go.
I happen to be a big fan of science. So I'm concerned that the NIH is going away and that the CDC are going away. And, I fly a lot, so I think we need more, air traffic controls as a general principle, not less. President Trump has DOGE has eliminated a lot of people who are in charge of maintaining the security and the safety of nuclear weapons. Again, that's a place where I would have overinvested as an American citizen and taxpayer. So the damage is being done dramatically already.
And we provided a great thing. I mean, we provided something very important, and we'll be working with you. You had a lot of people that weren't doing their job. They were just obstructionists, and a lot of people that didn't exist, I guess, Lee, too. We found a lot of empty spots that the people weren't there. They didn't exist. And I think education is going to be one of those. You go around Washington, you see all these buildings for the Department of Education. We want to move education back to the states where it belongs.
He is trying to rein in the size and scope of the administrative state and of the federal government in general. Ever since Woodrow Wilson, there's been a dramatic expansion of the number of agencies and the size and scope of the federal government. It was put on steroids by Franklin Delano Roosevelt and then again by Lyndon Johnson. Ronald Reagan famously said that the 9 most threatening words are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And all Republicans have talked about reining in the size and scope of the federal government since then. Donald Trump appears to be determined to actually do it with the assistance of the Department of Government Efficiency headed up by Elon Musk. So they are going to make mistakes, and there's going to be some collateral consequences. But Donald Trump is certainly hoping that the benefits of cutting out waste, fraud, and abuse and having radical transparency and showing the American public exactly how their taxpayer dollars have been spent, and they have been spent in ways in which the public would have clearly recoiled had they known this ahead of time, that in the end the benefits will dramatically outweigh these various problems and costs.
So, that's a case where, I think they're probably dead. We're really just talking about adding common sense controls that should be present, that haven't been present. So you say, well, how could such a thing arise? That seems crazy.
Many of the things that President Trump has done are constitutionally questionable. Typically, historically, according to the Constitution, the United States Congress allocates funds and sets up programs and charges the executive with running them. The executive has no authority to eliminate in whole cloth statutory programs that were set up by the Congress. That just does not exist in the Constitution. But, huge but, until someone stops the president from doing so, and this would be true of any president, they can do whatever they want. That's the whole point of a system of checks and balances, is that the other branches of government are supposed to try to reel in each other. And at this point, we haven't seen Congress show any interest whatsoever, at least the majorities in Congress show any interest whatsoever in reeling in President Trump.
They're afraid of him. That's really what it comes down to. And it is unusual. Legislators go through a lot to get elected. And to simply hand over their independence and give a blank check to any president is remarkable and somewhat disturbing.
Will now resume. Clerk will report the title. 217, the nays are 215. Majority voting in the affirmative, the concurrent resolution is adopted.
Yes, it is true that the Republicans control the majority of the Senate and the majority in the House, but they have a bare majority in the House. And certainly if Congress wants to exercise checks and balances, they can do so, not only through the power of purse, but through things like, whether they confirm nominees and oversight hearings. I mean, they have a lot of power. The president has a bully pulpit, and this president certainly knows how to use it. He can say, look, I'm going to send out stuff on Truth Social that gives praise to my friends and criticizes those who are going against my agenda for one reason or another. He can threaten to primary people who oppose his agenda. That is just politics.
But I think they can be quiet. They can sit on their hands. It's possible that some may walk out as long as they do it responsibly without shouting and yelling or trying to interrupt the president. I think that's perfectly okay as well. What is not okay and what will actually help Trump, which is the opposite of what they want to do, is if they start shouting epithets and interrupting Trump, which will, of course, enrage the Republicans. And there's slightly more of them in the chamber, as well as probably more Republican staffers who are going to be stuffed into the chamber as well. That will backfire on them. Now, this is going to be a test of their discipline. And I don't want to be too critical of the Democrats because they're in a terrible position. But they haven't shown a whole lot of discipline since the election. They've done a very, very poor job of being an opposition party, and they know it.
Or anything that happens.
We don't think that's going to happen. We think people are going to be very happy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it.
You know, we've seen in some sense more movement on the Israeli-Palestinian issue in the first weeks of the Trump administration than we'd argued seen years and years and years. Why? Because President Trump suggested something that every legal scholar in the world would tell you is a war crime. You know, moving 2 million people against their will is not something that a civilized country is supposed to do. Having said that, he's gotten people to talk. You know, he is definitely talking with the Russians. You know, you can say whether that's good or bad, but he's definitely doing it. He has certainly catalyzed Europeans in particular to think anew about their own security and about their own place in the world vis-a-vis the United States.
One thing is certain, Trump's return to power is already shaking up American politics. But will his leadership bring stability or deepen divisions? We'll be following every development, so stay tuned for the latest updates.